So we can talk about, obviously, the other guys that have committed in the class, and let's reel it all the way back, really to last Friday. So Devon Hall and Isaiah McMorris commit last Friday. I thought that was, not terribly surprising that was going to happen by that point. Like McMorris a lot, I think Hall can be a really good receiver on the outside, needs development, needs to learn how to run routes, all those things. And then from there, you have the official visit weekend. So you have the group of players who officially visit, and then you get two commits on Monday. Kawan Lacey, Rex Guthrie,
yeah.
Then Quinn Clark, then Carter Nelson. Caleb Pyfrom goes to Illinois. We don't really know about this kid tonight, right? Because you reached out to him and he gave you a shrug.
Yeah, we're not sure. I would think Kansas State's probably the odds-on favorite, but you never know.
I wonder. There's part of me that really wonders what's going to happen with that kid, because I think they kind of told Nebraska kind of told Caleb Pyfrom that he was gonna they were gonna do something else. Like they wanted him as a guard or a center, and he had time, and he didn't commit. He went to Illinois and visited there, and I think by the time he was going to make a decision, I'm not sure they're looking for any more interior linemen. It's really that simple. They've got their share. So I think at this point they're looking at Grant Bricks as a tackle and
right.
Cade Massey as a tackle, and then maybe some other tackles. I mean, you just start going down the list and trying to find people. But you can even reel it back the previous 2 weeks. Outside of Carter Nelson, who else jumps out at you as a commit, the guy that really impressed you, or in your conversations with them or watching them on film just jumped out at you?
Well, I would still say I would stick with Davon Hall and Isaiah McMorris for all the reasons that we've talked about before, where it 2 months ago, I think if you would have said that those guys were coming to Nebraska, that would have felt out of place. That would have felt odd. I remember talking with Davon Hall when he got his first Nebraska offer more than a year ago, and I remember you and I talking about it and saying he's not going to come to Nebraska. Like his stock was already taken off. He was turning heads nationally, going to camps, and here he is. So like obviously what those two have done on the field at Bellevue West and in combination with Daniel Kalin has been notable, but the fact that Nebraska and a new staff at Nebraska was able to keep both of those players here, I thought was really impressive. And it seems like they started by saying, we want to keep you here for you, and not because you're an in-state person that sort of checks the box and makes us look good, but because we have a vision for you specifically. And Garrett McGuire's name keeps coming up, I think, with a lot of these guys too, where he's that almost that older brother that they can relate to. He talks the way they talk. He has energy the way they have energy. Quinn Clark, who committed, said he was impressed with McGuire from the first slide that he showed him. He said, this dude is detailed and knows what he's talking about. And he's, a 24-year-old former quarterback in college.
Right.
So, guys are drawn to him. Malachi Coleman, going back to the 23 class, big reason why Nebraska was able to close the gap with him so quickly was what Garrett McGuire did. So, I think you're starting to see an early pattern there. And then again, just the fact that it seems like almost overnight Nebraska figured out how to recruit in-state is pretty remarkable. I mean, we had this discussion in the spring, didn't we, about
they've done pretty well. I'm not going to say that.
What did we say in the spring? We had this discussion in the spring that there were 7 in-state 24 prospects that had Power 5 offers, and you set the over-under at 3.5 that of them would end up in Nebraska. I took the under. I didn't think they'd be able to close the gap with a lot of these guys, and I think they're already at 4.
They're
right?
4.
So they've already hit the over, and we're still in June. To me, that's really impressive. I did not see that coming a few months ago.
They're at 5.
At 5, you got Kalin, McMorris, Hall,
Ashton Murphy,
Nelson,
Carter
and Murphy.
Nelson.
Okay, yeah, that's really impressive.
I think it is. We'll see how the thing with Pyfrom goes. I think he's a good player and has a lot of room to grow, but he's going to Illinois. And then I think the kid from Prep is a good player. And I suspect this is stuff that people have told me that he's really good. And my suspicion is, hindsight being 2020, maybe there's a way to have worked that. My read of the current tight end commit in the class, Ian Flint, is he's bigger than Grant Bricks. Like, he's huge. He's about a 265-pound tight end. Flint is. And he's tall. He's like 6'6". He could move to tackle. There's just so I think there was probably room for another tight end in the class. Maybe Tanner Hollinger out of Cross County becomes that guy eventually. I don't know. He's got an offer from Illinois too. So Illinois is trying to build into this place because Bart Miller is from Omaha. Of their other recruits that they got during this run, Rex Guthrie is probably the one that I'm most impressed with. Now, he didn't have any Power 5 offers. He tested really well, obviously, at Nebraska's camp. I think that helped. His film's really good. He plays 4 or 5 different positions on the defense. So he's an in-the-box safety. He can play linebacker, in-the-box safety, single high safety, nickel. He can do pretty much everything. And, man, that's an asset. He reminds me of Isaac Gifford. Maybe a little bit different than Gifford. Maybe not quite as big. But, man, I mean, he's a good player. And he tested really well, too. And that's a guy that you want on your team. He's kind of an inside-out kind of guy. He knows how to play the position. Knows how to string out a run, doesn't give back the cutback lane, knows where to tackle a guy, tackles at the nearest hip. Knows where his help is, knows when to spill it, knows when to shoot it, to shoot a shot. He's a good player. I don't know why the rankings are the way they are. And, of course, naturally, the minute these kids commit to Nebraska, I mean, one of them got like an 87 on 247. I'm like, he wasn't anything a week ago. I mean, how did we get that? And that's all fine. Can't remember who it was. I know other recruiting guys are really high on Prude. He's 6'5", 190. He is basically the same size as Quinn Clark. We'll see. I think that's a player that needs to build into a linebacker body. Pretty hard, I think, to play safety at that position. You don't see many 6'5" safeties. You might see 6'5" linebackers. Urlacher was a 6'5" safety, but that's a whole different conversation of a person at New Mexico. I know that's part of what they're thinking about. So Urlacher played in that 3-3-5, and he was kind of their rover. I think that's a stretch, but you never know. Javen Wright's 6'5", but Javen Wright's not quite hit his stride.
Right.
Quinn Clark is 6'6". There are very few 6'6" receivers in Nebraska history. There are a few. Will Henry was one. You probably remember Will.
Yeah, mid-2000s.
Brian Reimers. He was a walk-on.
Rhyme Dog.
That's right, Rhyme Dog. So he was one of them. So he was a tall receiver. I can't remember exactly how tall Morgan Gregory was, but Morgan Gregory was tall.
Mo Purify was tall.
He was, but Mo was 6'4" and 225.
Sure.
I don't know if Quinn Clark gets to 225 pounds, and if he does, is he a tight end? Justin McGriff was 6'5", and he 6'6", and he did not make it here. Whatever reason, he decided to leave. He went to Utah State. He became a better football player there. I think he's on a training camp roster. So Clark is one where they're really gonna have to decide, and Keelan Smith is another one.
Smith's the other one, yeah.
Where is this guy a tight end? Is he a wide receiver? Is he an adjuster? I think in today's parlance we would have called Mike McNeil kind of an adjuster, kind of a receiver, kind of a tight end. Those guys don't have the easiest time going to the next level because at that level you're either an elite receiver, a DK Metcalf style athlete, or you better learn how to block. So they've got some tweener bodies that'll be really interesting to kind of sort through as they process. But Rex Guthrie is not one of them. He is a prototypical safety and plays like a total badass. The running back is interesting, Kawan Lacey, and I'm of the belief that most running backs are pretty darn good in high school. You don't know exactly how many of them are going to be good in college. And you just kind of got to go get a couple. and then you'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Lacey doesn't strike me as a can't-miss guy, but he also doesn't strike me as a, afterthought. Likes contact, runs through it, physical. Downhill runner. I would not describe him as a Mo Washington type or Aaron Green, who wasn't here very long, or even Amir. Amir would go all over the place. You just never really knew. He could bounce runs. He could cut them back. There's a lot of things he could do. This guy is a downhill, between the tackles, come tackle me kind of runner, who's got some speed. I'd describe him as a good player. You don't see a ton of, catching the football and what he can do out of the backfield. And apparently he was banged up a little bit last year. He actually appeared in 8 games, or they had 8 games for him. The guy that he was sharing time with signed with Arizona State. So that was a good backfield down there in the Dallas-Fort Worth complex. So we'll see kind of where that goes. Guthrie at this point would be, if I was putting it together, a Super 6 would be in it. I think he's going to have a terrific senior year. His recruiting ranking probably won't change very much because he didn't get offers from schools that, I don't know what Colorado's doing. I'm not sure Colorado knows what Colorado's doing. That program is running itself in a completely different fashion than everybody else. And then I don't know what Colorado State's doing, and I'm not sure it matters.
What do you make of 6 DBs in the class?
Well, there could be 7 if Caleb Benham commits.
Yeah.
Well, it's a 5 DB defense, so there's some of that to consider. Certainly the way that they've run that defense before, the Rover, unless it's Urlacher, is a DB. I mean, he's maybe a 6'2", 210 guy, but he's not a Big Ten linebacker. He's not 240. So my sense is a couple things. One, they signed a bunch in the previous class, but I don't know. Maybe they know something about some of those guys coming in because some of them rolled early. There's a lot of older guys in that secondary room.
Yep.
And there's probably going to be some guys that leave after this cycle too. Like, they're not going to play much. I think you're going to see Nebraska embrace some of these younger corners. I think Dwight Boodle might make his way into the 2 deep, and that'll probably send a message over here and then over here. I think they just got a hunch, and it's probably a pretty good hunch, that some of these guys will leave after this season. Newsom's obviously going to leave to the NFL. Farmer,
yeah.
This will be Farmer's 5th year on campus. Now, I think he has a 6th because of the COVID year.
And he redshirted his first year.
He
would.
And he has a COVID year. I think Newsom might too. But I just don't know if he's going to want to do it another year. 5 years on campus is a long time. Omar Brown's a senior. Singleton is something. I don't know. It's like his 4th or 5th year in college. Who am I forgetting?
You could put Gifford on that list.
Gifford will be back. Yeah, Gifford will be back. He signed in 2020. So Gifford will return. But we're getting into that point. Javen Wright's 5th year. This is his 5th year on campus.
That's remarkable.
It is.
Feels like he just got here.
Yeah. So there's some guys that I think are going to be rotating out, and they're going to have to get people ready. I know they spent a lot of time thinking about which part of the class this guy is in. So that'll be something to watch. But so what do they have left? Well, as it stands right now, and we'll do the recruiting rankings next week. Their recruiting rankings next week are going to be better than they probably will turn out to be, and I'm not trying to knock them. I'm just saying that right now, according to On3, and that's the lowest ranking, is 19th. And some of that is related to the number of commits.
It's got to be quantity, yeah.
It's quantity. And On3 is a little different. They only use 12 commits in their ranking score. So it doesn't matter if you have more than 12. But there's a number of teams that only have, like Arkansas has 13, and so they'll probably get some better ones along the way. Auburn has 8 commits. Texas has 8 commits. Some other schools only have 7. Virginia Tech has 11. So there's going to be some schools that spike,
Sure.
I think Nebraska's probably in a top 30 class at this point. But here's kind of what they've got left. They got to go find an offensive tackle or two. Caden Massey decides tonight. We'll see. Grant Bricks is a top 100 player. I think he's down in Nebraska, Kansas State, Alabama. Iowa was never really in the picture there. I don't think he wanted to go to Iowa. So maybe OU is in Grant's picture too. I've tried calling him many times, has not responded. I think he's trying to make a decision. If Nebraska got both of those guys, they would be in really good shape. I mean, the class would be very close to complete if they were to get both of them. But those are two tackles that are out there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they need to get some defensive tackles. And Carlon Jones is one, certainly Bay City, Texas. He's kind of finished his visits for June now. I think he went Oklahoma State, TCU, one other team, and then Georgia Tech. California, which is a way off the mat choice. And then Georgia Tech. So his top five are Oklahoma State, TCU, California, Georgia Tech, and Nebraska. I think Nebraska's got a good chance of winning that. TCU obviously had a great season. We'll see. But that would be one. I think they probably still need a couple more. I still think that position needs to be recruited just hellaciously. You just have to have players all the time.
I wouldn't be surprised if they waited until after the season too, as much as they like to evaluate senior film of guys, and somebody's going to pop and they'll feel good about them in a few months as well.
I think that's a good point. I think that's very true. They'll have an opportunity to evaluate both at the end of the season and then between December and February.